I got the invitation 2 weeks before the party. Glossy cardstock, gold cursive font, and a little line at the bottom that read, "Formal attire only. We're celebrating greatness." I knew exactly who had written that line. My younger sister Ava, the newly minted graduate in business administration, the family's golden girl. I stared at the envelope for a long time, then set it on the kitchen counter next to a basket of groceries I'd just bought after my shift. 10 hours behind a register, then a second job delivering flowers until sunset. My feet were sore, my back ached. But somehow that envelope managed to sting worse than both. It wasn't that I didn't want to go. It was that I didn't know if I could handle another evening of pretending I belonged. See, in my family, success comes with a specific look. A polished LinkedIn profile, expensive handbags, and Instagram-worthy vacation photos. I had none of those. What I did have was rent paid on time, groceries in the fridge, and a younger brother whose college fees I quietly helped cover when Dad forgot to. But none of that counted. Not to them. My mom called a few days later, voice sweet but rehearsed. "Kelly, I hope you'll come. Ava really wants you there." That was a lie. Ava hadn't said a real word to me in months. Not since Christmas, when I showed up in my work uniform because I didn't have time to change. She made a joke about my branded polyester couture as she opened a Dior gift set. Everyone laughed, but I still said yes, because that's what I do. I show up. The day of the party, I borrowed a dress from a friend at the flower shop. It was a bit tight in the chest and loose at the waist, but it was black and elegant and not a uniform, so it would do. I curled my hair, wore lipstick. I even took the night off both jobs, which meant I'd lose money, but I told myself it was worth it. The party was held at a rented rooftop in the city. White linens, champagne towers, a jazz band. I walked in alone. No one noticed. Not at first. Then Ava spotted me. She walked over in a satin dress that probably cost more than my rent, heels clicking confidently on the stone floor. "Kelly," she said, air-kissing both cheeks like we were strangers who only knew each other from mutual friends. "You look good," she said with a smirk that didn't quite reach her eyes. I smiled, tight-lipped. "You too." She turned before I could say more. That was Ava. Quick exits, even quicker judgments. I found a seat near the back, alone. No one asked me to join their table. I wasn't surprised. The champagne flowed, speeches were made. Ava's professors, her friends, even her old debate coach stood to talk about how she was going places, how she had drive, how the world better be ready. No one mentioned that she'd failed 3 math classes before Dad paid for a private tutor. No one mentioned how she'd crashed Mom's car and blamed a valet. But that's not how family stories work. We edit, we polish. Then came dinner. I ate slowly, savoring the overpriced food I hadn't paid for. Just as I reached for my glass of water, Ava stood up. She tapped her glass lightly with a spoon. "I just want to thank everyone for coming," she said, voice clear, rehearsed, perfect. "It means so much to have you all here as I celebrate the end of one chapter and the beginning of another." Polite applause. She looked around, then paused, eyes locking on me. "And of course," she added, "I want to thank my family, especially my big sister Kelly." I froze. She's taught me a lot. Like how to keep a job for 12 years and never get promoted. Laughter. Real laughter. My uncle actually slapped the table. Ava smiled. "Imagine being 30 and still a cashier." She said it like a compliment, like it was funny. It wasn't. Then my dad chimed in, wine glass in hand. "Some of us move up," he said, grinning. "Others stay behind." More laughter. Mom gave a tight smile. My brother stared at his plate. I wanted to sink into the floor. The sting hit hard. Not because I was ashamed of my job, but because of who said it. Family. The people who were supposed to know better. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, a voice rose from the other end of the table. Calm, clear. "To the woman who pays all our salaries." Heads turned. It was my boss. I didn't even know he was coming. He stood holding his glass. "To Kelly," he repeated. "The woman who owns the company you all think she just works for." Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Ava's smile dropped. My father blinked. Forks paused midair. I sat frozen, heart racing, the weight of years pressing down and lifting all at once. I didn't know it then, but that night was going to change everything. The silence after my boss's toast felt like it had weight. Not the awkward kind that comes when someone forgets a line in a speech, but the kind that cracks through a room like a storm splitting open a calm sky. I didn't move. I couldn't. My hand hovered above my plate, my heart pounding like I had just been thrown into the center of a stage with no script. "To Kelly," my boss repeated, glass raised, eyes locked on mine. "The woman who built our logistics system from scratch. The woman who saved our company over $2 million last year by restructuring our supply chain during a crisis. The one who quietly made sure every one of you got your deliveries on time, even if you never knew it." The room stayed still. My dad slowly set his wine glass down. Ava opened her mouth, then shut it again. My boss took a sip and sat back down like nothing had happened. Just casually dropped a truth bomb in the middle of a party and left the crater behind. I looked around the room and saw confusion, then embarrassment, from the very people who had laughed just moments earlier. Still, no one said a word. Ava gave a quick laugh, forced and brittle. "Wow, that was dramatic." No one laughed this time. The band played softly in the background again, like even they weren't sure what to do. I glanced at my mother. Her face was unreadable, but I could see her fingers tightening around her napkin. And my sister? She looked like someone had poured sour wine into her champagne. I wanted to say something. Anything. But I didn't. Not because I was afraid, but because the moment was already louder than anything I could add to it. Sometimes silence does the talking for you. So I reached for my water and drank slowly, like nothing had happened. Because the truth is, they all forgot who I really was. They remembered the cashier part. Yes. The uniform, the scanner, the way I smelled faintly like cinnamon rolls from my weekend bakery shifts. But they forgot what I did after work, who I became when the apron came off. They forgot the night shifts I worked teaching myself Excel, then advanced supply chain logistics, while Ava was out partying with the same friends now clinking glasses on her behalf. They forgot how I started my own logistics company from scratch, using YouTube tutorials, a beat-up laptop, and a couch that doubled as my bed for a year. They forgot how I built a client base through word of mouth and relentless reliability, how I reinvested every dollar instead of buying myself anything new, how I stayed small on purpose so I could stay lean and flexible and ahead of the corporate dinosaurs. And they never knew, because I never told them. Why would I? The few times I tried to explain what I did, I got blank stares. My father once said, "So, you deliver packages?" And when I clarified, he nodded like he understood, then told someone I drove trucks for Amazon. So I stopped trying. I let them believe what they wanted. I didn't correct them when they called me just a cashier or the dependable one, like it was both a compliment and a pitying shrug. I kept my head down, focused on my work, paid my taxes, built my company one contract at a time. But that night, as I watched their faces shift, from arrogance to confusion to something dangerously close to shame, I realized something. They didn't forget who I was. They never bothered to find out. My success hadn't happened in secret. It had happened quietly. And in a world where noise is currency, quiet work is often mistaken for no work at all. But my boss knew, because he saw the nights I stayed late to help him rework his projections when the market tanked. He saw the emails I sent at 2 a.m. with new optimization plans. He saw the way I treated everyone on our team like they mattered. Because I had once been overlooked too. That's why he showed up. Uninvited. Unannounced. Because he knew the room I was walking into wouldn't see me unless someone forced them to. And he was right. After dinner, people started approaching me. Not many, but a few. My cousin Josh, who once called me the family turtle, said, "Didn't know you were running stuff like that. That's impressive." His girlfriend nodded awkwardly beside him. My aunt offered me another glass of wine and said, "You always were the quiet achiever." Like that suddenly made everything okay. But I didn't need their compliments. I wasn't hungry for their approval anymore. That night didn't mark the beginning of my transformation. It marked the moment they were finally forced to see it. And Ava? She didn't come over. She just stared from across the room, sipping her champagne like it had betrayed her. But I knew better. Her problem wasn't that I was still a cashier at 30. Her problem was that I had been, and still outran them all. The party thinned out slowly after dinner, like people weren't quite sure how to leave. Or maybe they were trying to recover the vibe that had shattered so abruptly. Small talk buzzed here and there, laughter felt forced, and the champagne didn't flow as easily as before. I stood by the railing of the rooftop for a moment, letting the night air hit my face. The city lights shimmered below, steady and indifferent. I liked that about the city. It didn't care who you were trying to impress. It just kept going. Behind me, I could hear the clinking of glasses and murmured apologies, pretending to be compliments. "Kelly, I had no idea." "Wow, logistics, huh? You must be so proud of yourself." As if they were all just catching up to the reality I had lived for years. I didn't respond much. Just nodded, smiled politely, and let them say what they needed to say to make themselves feel better. Because that's what it was. Guilt wrapped in awkward admiration. No one asked how I did it. No one asked why I worked 2 jobs for years. No one asked what it cost me. They didn't ask about the nights I came home so tired I forgot to eat. The weekends I skipped outings because I couldn't afford the gas and the groceries. The birthdays I spent alone, because building something from nothing means sacrificing everything. Even time with people who didn't value you to begin with. They didn't ask about the relationship that fell apart because my partner didn't understand why I kept choosing my goals over date nights, or how I once sold my car to cover a surprise tax bill and commuted 2 hours by bus while managing a growing team of drivers remotely. They didn't ask because it would have required seeing me, not just as the big sister, or the family cashier, or the quiet one, but as a whole, complex woman who chose the long road without applause. And if there's one thing my family didn't do well, it was acknowledging the parts of life that weren't pretty. I turned away from the city lights and headed back toward the main area. My mother was talking to Aunt Janice, nodding along as she always did, trying to blend in. That was her way. Go along, keep the peace, don't rock the boat. I used to resent her for it. But now I just understood that survival looks different for everyone. When she saw me approach, her eyes widened slightly. "Kelly," she said, adjusting her purse strap unnecessarily. "Your dress looks really lovely tonight." I raised an eyebrow. My mother didn't give compliments unless they came with a side of concern. "Thanks," I said carefully. She hesitated, then added, "I didn't know you'd built something like that." "You never said." "I did," I replied. "You just didn't listen." It came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take it back. She looked down at her drink. "I'm listening now." We stood in silence for a moment. I didn't need her to apologize. I just needed her to stop pretending that her silence hadn't meant something. That her constant worry about how I looked to the neighbors, how I dressed, who I dated, hadn't shaped the way the rest of the family treated me. "You know," she said finally, "Ava's under a lot of pressure. She's still figuring things out." I nodded. So was I, at 22, and no one toasted me back then. She didn't respond, maybe because there wasn't anything to say. I walked away before she could say something empty like, "We're proud of you," because I wasn't sure it would land right. I didn't want pride. I wanted recognition. I found my boss near the bar, speaking with one of our drivers who had stopped by for a quick hello. When he saw me, he gave me a small nod. I hope you don't mind me saying something earlier, he said. I just couldn't sit through that. I don't mind, I said. I didn't know you were coming. He smiled. Your assistant sent me the invite. Said you wouldn't. I blinked. Sophie? He nodded. She said, Kelly won't tell you, but she deserves someone in that room who actually sees her. I swallowed hard. Sophie was 21, new to the company, but she already understood more than half my relatives ever did. Thank you, I said quietly. You built something people would kill for, Kelly, he said. And you did it without a roadmap. I just thought they should know. I nodded. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not there. Not yet. Back near the dessert table, Ava was laughing with her friends again, but the edge in her voice was different now. It was tighter. Forced. She caught my eye once, and I swear there was something in her face I couldn't read. Rage, maybe? Or fear. Because when you're always the center of attention, someone else being seen feels like a threat. I didn't go over to her. She knew where to find me. And for once, I wasn't going to shrink myself just to make her comfortable. I walked back to the railing one last time and watched the skyline shimmer again. I wasn't done yet. The party would end, but the ripple it caused was just beginning. They had laughed at me for staying behind. But the truth was, I had been building behind the scenes, brick by brick. And now, the house stood taller than any of them expected. I didn't plan on staying much longer. After my boss's toast, the party had taken on a strange new shape. Like someone had quietly rearranged all the furniture in a familiar room, and no one quite knew where to sit anymore. Conversations were shorter. Smiles didn't reach as far. And Ava? Well, Ava had stopped glowing. But just as I was about to gather my things, she found me. Hey, she said, her heels clicking sharply across the patio floor. Got a second? I turned, surprised. Her voice didn't have the usual edge. If anything, it sounded hesitant. Like she'd practiced this approach in the mirror and wasn't sure it would land. Sure, I said. She motioned toward a quieter corner of the rooftop, away from the string lights and dessert tables and family buzz. I followed, partly curious, partly cautious. For a moment, we stood side by side in silence, looking out over the city like we were tourists in our own lives. So, she began, that was unexpected. I nodded. Yeah, I didn't know you were doing all that, she said, folding her arms. Her tone was careful now, but still laced with something else. Resentment, maybe, or confusion. You didn't ask, I replied. She glanced sideways at me. You could have told me. Would you have listened? That hung in the air between us like a challenge. She looked away first. I didn't mean for my joke to come off that harsh, she added, voice softer now. It was just a bit. No, I said. It wasn't. She blinked, clearly caught off guard. It wasn't just a bit, Ava. It was layered. You knew what you were doing. And it landed exactly how you wanted it to. Until it didn't. Her shoulders tensed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The weight of my words came from years of silence. You've always made me the example, I said. The one you rise above. The cautionary tale. I let you do that for years because it was easier than fighting you for space I was never going to be given. She shifted on her heels. That's not fair. It is. I cut in calmly. And deep down, you know it. There was a long pause. Then she said something I didn't expect. I guess I just thought I'd be further ahead by now. That admission cracked her armor a little. I mean, I have the degree, the internships, the polished resume. But I'm still waiting for an offer that doesn't treat me like a glorified assistant. And here you are, running a whole company. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to let that settle. Ava had always been the one with the shiny milestones, the framed certificates, the Instagram likes. But now the comparison that had always favored her had flipped, and she didn't know how to sit with that. You think this happened overnight? I finally said. You think I woke up one morning and found myself successful? I bled for this. I sacrificed for this. I worked when no one was watching and kept going when no one believed in me. Her eyes dropped. And just because you didn't see it, I continued, doesn't mean it didn't happen. She looked at me, something flickering in her expression. Regret, maybe. Or the first crack in a long-held delusion. I don't know how to be okay with not being the favorite anymore, she whispered. I think I made you smaller so I could feel bigger. It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. I nodded slowly. I know. The thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. What I felt was something colder, something cleaner. Clarity. I wasn't standing here waiting for her apology. I didn't need her validation. What I needed was exactly what I'd already given myself. The freedom to walk into any room without shame. You don't have to be the favorite, I said quietly. You just have to be real. She didn't respond. Just stood there, hands clenched as if holding back all the things she wasn't ready to face. I should get back, I said, turning to leave. Kelly? I paused. Do you think we'll ever be close again? I thought about that for a moment. I think we never really were, I said gently. But maybe someday, we could start something real. If you want that. She nodded, slowly. I didn't wait for her to say more. I just walked back into the warmth of the lights, the music, the people. And for once, I didn't feel like I was performing. I felt like I was finally seen. The masks were slipping one by one, and maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something better than pretending. The elevator ride down was quiet. Just me, my heels in one hand, and the weight of everything that had finally been said. My phone buzzed in my clutch. Twice. But I ignored it. I needed the silence more than I needed anyone's follow-up message. I needed a moment where I wasn't explaining myself or accepting hollow praise or pretending I wasn't hurt. I stepped out onto the street and inhaled. The night air was cool, and for the first time all day, I felt like I could actually breathe. My car was parked around the corner, but I didn't head there right away. I walked a block or two, letting the noise of the city surround me. It was a different kind of hum, one that didn't ask me to shrink. When I finally sat behind the wheel, I checked my phone. The first text was from Sophie. Sophie, your boss came through. Told you the universe would balance itself eventually. I smiled. The second text was from my mom. Mom, I'm sorry, Kelly. For a lot of things, I didn't know how to be different. I'm trying. I stared at the screen for a long time. She had never said those words before. Not when Dad dismissed me at the dinner table. Not when Ava made her passive-aggressive jokes. Not even when I showed up in tears one night years ago after a breakup and she simply offered me tea instead of comfort. But here it was. A sentence. Small, imperfect, maybe even too late. But it was something. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I drove home. My apartment was dark and still. I clicked on the hallway light and stood in the doorway for a minute, looking at the life I had built. The secondhand couch with the little tear in the armrest. The thrifted bookshelf filled with business books and one plant that refused to die. The small but steady reminder that every single thing in here had been earned, not handed down. There was a time when I would have looked around and seen lack. Now I saw proof. I slipped off my shoes, padded into the kitchen, and made tea. Not the fancy kind Ava probably drank. Just peppermint in a chipped mug I loved because it was mine. I sat at the table and opened my laptop, half on autopilot. I had 3 new client requests sitting in my inbox. One from a company in Boston I'd been hoping to land for months. I flagged it to respond to in the morning. Then I clicked over to our internal team chat. A new message blinked from Javier, one of our warehouse leads. Javier. Saw the speech your boss gave. Sophie shared the clip. Damn, we knew you were a badass, but... My breath caught. He posted a video. The moment, that moment, My boss raising his glass. The quiet, the stillness, the words, "To the woman who pays all our salaries." Someone had filmed it. The video had already been shared dozens of times within the team thread. Reactions flooded in. Clapping emojis, fire emojis, one gif of a mic drop, and then a comment from Leah, our head of HR. Leah: "It's wild how the people outside the company still see her as just a cashier, and yet we'd follow her into war. Respect, Kelly. Mad respect." I stared at that message, and suddenly I felt it. Not pride, not validation, but peace. They saw me. The people I built something with. The ones who knew what I did every day. They didn't care about degrees or family titles or old stories. They respected me not because of a speech, but because they had watched me earn it. And somehow that meant more than anything Ava or my dad could ever say. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. For so long, I'd been trying to prove myself to the wrong audience, trying to make people proud who had already decided what I was worth. But the people who mattered, they already knew. They saw every late-night email, every strategy that worked, every decision that protected jobs when cuts were coming. They didn't need me to wear a new dress or deliver a clever speech. They just needed me to keep showing up. And I did, over and over again, even when no one clapped, especially then. That night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to be bigger, better, more. I didn't need to win anyone over or fix the past. I just needed to rest, because the fight was over. They had finally seen what I had always known. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight filtering through the blinds and the quiet hum of a world still spinning, unbothered by the drama of rooftop toasts or shattered family illusions. My phone had over 20 unread messages. I didn't check them right away. Instead, I brewed my coffee and stood barefoot on my balcony, watching the city move. People rushing to jobs, to school drop-offs, to lives as complicated as mine. None of them knew what had happened the night before, and I liked that. It reminded me how small even the biggest storms can feel once you're out of them. When I finally did check my phone, the texts were a mix. "Mom, would you come over for lunch this weekend? Just you and me? Cousin Lara, you're kind of a legend now. I had no idea. Sorry for being, well, like the rest of them. Ava, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I'll call when I have the courage." Even my father had texted. "Dad, well, I suppose I underestimated you. That won't happen again. No apology, no ownership, just a clumsy olive branch." But for once, I didn't ache for more. I didn't feel the need to explain, to prove, to fix. I just let the words sit there, weightless. That afternoon, I went into the office. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I walked past the receptionist who greeted me with a grin wider than usual, past my team huddled over a whiteboard, deep in logistics planning. My office door had a Post-it stuck to it, boss mode activated. "Sophie," I laughed. For the first time, I let myself really laugh. Inside, everything was as I'd left it. Tidy, organized, mine. I sat at my desk, ran a meeting, approved a new hire, then spent 15 minutes helping a junior analyst figure out a pricing error. She apologized twice for not getting it sooner. I told her what no one ever told me. It's okay. We learn. That's how we grow. And I meant it. At lunch, Sophie knocked on my door. "You good?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm more than good." She sat down. "I wasn't sure if I overstepped by inviting your boss to that party." "You didn't," I said. "You gave me a moment I didn't know I needed." "Yeah," she said, smiling. "It was kind of badass." We both laughed again. Later that day, I got a call from a new client. Big one. National chain. Said they'd seen the video, heard about our company from a mutual contact, and wanted to talk about a multi-state deal. Funny how visibility works. I had built something extraordinary in the shadows. But it took one spotlight moment for the world to turn its head. That evening, I went home, Kicked off my shoes and made a simple dinner. Just toast and soup and my favorite playlist humming softly in the background. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And I realized something, standing there with a wooden spoon in one hand and music floating through the apartment. I had spent years shrinking, not because I wasn't proud of who I was, but because I thought my value had to be wrapped in silence. That if I worked hard enough and kept my head down, eventually someone would notice. But the truth is, silence never saved me. I did. Not with speeches or drama or clapbacks, but by showing up, over and over, by building when no one believed, by choosing purpose over performance. That graduation party? It didn't change me, it just revealed me. To them, and to myself. Ava and I still weren't close. We might never be. But that no longer felt like a wound. It just felt like truth. Some relationships aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to teach you where to draw your line. My mother and I had lunch that weekend. We talked, really talked, for the first time in years. She listened more than she spoke. And when I stood to leave, she hugged me tighter than I expected. She didn't say sorry again, but I didn't need her to. The silence had finally shifted. I still get texts from people who were at that party. Some say they regret laughing. Some say they admire me. Some ask for advice. And some just say thank you. But here's the thing. I don't live for their thanks. I live for the version of me who once sat in a break room at 11 p.m. with sore feet and a dream so fragile it felt ridiculous. The woman who didn't quit, who didn't shrink, who refused to be defined by what people saw on the surface. That's who I do it for. That's who I honor. And if you're reading this, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, made the joke, or felt like you had to apologize for your survival, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me sooner. You don't need to get louder to be heard. You just need to stop shrinking. Your story is enough. Your strength is enough. You are enough, just as you are. And if someone ever tries to laugh at that again, let them. And then, like I did that night, stand up, look them in the eye, and walk out steady, head high, heart whole. Because the best revenge isn't a comeback. It's never having needed their approval in the first place.